Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. This is episode 566. Recording this on the 5th of February at 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. I think I rustled up some good stories, listeners and viewers, and I've got a good panel. Before we go into the main stories, there's a couple of things I've got to do. I first want to dedicate this podcast to the memory of Captain Sir Tom Moore, a great British patriot and a very average man, but in many ways a great man. I just want to dedicate this to his memory.
I read that about him going back and forth on his walker to raise money. Like, what a man!
Yeah, he raised almost £33 million. Well, I think that's about $43 million for the National Health Service. He was just a great man. And I want to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor is Kinsta Hosting. Kinsta is a specialized WordPress hosting provider. If you're looking for power for yourself or for your clients, i.e. you've got a Woocommerce site, a learning management system, a membership site, you need really good quality hosting. And that's what you get with Kinsta. You get all the bells and whistles, great support, great technology. I suggest that you go over to Kinsta, have a look at what they've got to offer, and also buy one of their packages, not only for yourself, but for your clients. If you do that, please tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. It helps Kinsta and it helps the show. Your support is much appreciated. So, panel, I'm going to let you introduce yourself first. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, it's Spence from Lunch. Oh, I have a frog today. From LaunchFlows.com.
There we go. I got my friend John. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
John from LockdownSEO.com.
Got my friend Sally. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Sally Getch, the WP fangirl and organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup.
I've got my co-host for my interview show, Stephen. Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Stephen Sutter from zipfish.io.
I have the unicorn whisperer joining us. Heather, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Heather Wild-Renzi. I am the digital solutions lead at The Difference and author of Birth of a Unicorn.
You're a little bit shallow in your sound.
Sorry.
You need to push the mic. I'm sorry.
That's right. Chew on the microphone.
Yes. So let's start with story 3. FSE and WordPress themes. What does a MVP look like? What do you reckon about this one, Sally?
I reckon that Josepha got married, and I haven't the faintest idea how to pronounce her new name. Apart from that, well, it is kind of a question, right? They've been playing with it for a while, and no one seems really happy with it. And the list of milestones and kind of how we want to get to full site editing seems reasonable. But of course, the process of building out Gutenberg as it has been is full of bumps. So it's kind of like, well, we'll see.
The saga continues. What do you reckon, John? Yeah. Oh, let's go.
Anyway, sorry, I was having a problem here. The full site editing, MVP, they talked about this, and a lot of people have doubts about getting it out by July, as it mentions in the article. The features are a little bit behind page builders that have already been built out. I think it would be like eventually this is the goal. I mean, that's undeniable. It's going to happen. But it's just a matter of how long it takes to get there and what steps are in between. But yeah, I mean, this is the goal.
Yes. I mean, they've already gotten to the point of, well, of launching it in a, launching the original version of the block editor in a fairly incomplete stage and having people generally frustrated with it. And, if it's not done, it's better to wait until it is more done than to push it out there, because people are just going to be very frustrated.
What do you reckon, Spencer? This just seems I'm getting a bit tired. It's a long and windy road, isn't it? Is it going to ever end, Spencer? Is it ever going to end?
First of all, I like any kind of tavern or other article that gets Juice or Joost Van de Valk to come on out of his Jeffrey Epstein Island and make a comment because you think that.
Well, the quote's pretty good. Vision without execution is hallucination.
Well, the reason I bring it up is that I don't have any bones to pick with him personally, but what I find is that, Yoast's and his plugins or his team's plugins are some of the worst offenders of infiltrating other people's business when it comes to what they do. For example, like how it handles 301 redirects and how it will do things to your post editor. So it's interesting to me, if he's bothering to come on out and comment when he really doesn't need to be doing that, then there must be some significance. As far as my own take on it, I would say there are good times in WordPress that you should work on the airplane's engines while it's in the air, not when it comes to the core editor. Because you can't expect anybody to build anything if we don't know what the result is going to be of the foundation of the entire website. I mean, this is not just like a bolt-on, you can optionally turn it on and off. This is like, I'm in Classic and I'm trying desperately to use Gutenberg. And now Gutenberg's like, well, we're going to start MVPing stuff and throwing it around the screen. And then we get in that whole, to drag it to the left, I use the vertical bar thing because that's the symbol for that. And it's already been a mess. So I'm agreeing with what he's saying. It clearly has enough significance that he's coming out of his hole and exposing himself to comments and stuff. And I think that what we really need is somebody to get in there and assign 4, 5, 6 people as a real team that are, this is the Gutenberg team, and this is a project just like Elementor or Beaver Builder or Brizzy or anything else.
It must be nice that the tavern wants your comments, unlike I like mine, Spencer. They don't seem to want my comments.
You need a pseudonym now, and you need a profile that you create so you can be, Charlie.
I think there's a few people in Automatic that wants to give me more than a pseudonym. But there we go. Stephen, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, what does the MVP look like? I mean, that is the $1 million question. Like, this is a hard thing to do an MVP on because it kind of has to be right the first time you go for it. Like, you can't have a half-baked thing when you're changing the very infrastructure that a WordPress site is built off of. And so to say this is an MVP and expect people to switch over to it is like kind of a hard thing to do, which is why they say, like, at the very end is, I think, like, their milestone 7 is gradual adoption. I mean, that's the key to be able to make this MVP work. Something interesting I thought too is that of the actual 6 milestones they're talking about in this article, number 1 through 4 are like pretty much all UI based stuff. Like, how does this look? How does this feel? What is the style? And that, because that's really the crux of the issue. Like, when you take something that people know and love and are used to, even if it's not the best thing in the world, knowing where to click the button is 1,000 times better than having to hunt and search for the button. So I was really pleased to see that, like, all these milestones early on, and the bulk of them are all about the styling and UI and how that works. So it'll be interesting to see as they pull this together what that looks like. It's a hard task, I feel, for anybody that's on that team and it's like is in the weeds there. But
there you go. What do you reckon, Heather? Got any thoughts about this before we go on to the next story?
As somebody that is a developer, I'm really excited that I'll be able to, like, hack the themes easier. That's my take. I mean,
I think where it's going to take us is good.
Yeah, for most people, it's a non-issue, but this is going to be personally, like, I'm looking forward to it.
Do you think, Heather, it's really going to happen this year?
Not necessarily. I mean, always take the estimate and multiply it by at least 2.5, because most developers have no idea how long things take.
Not just developers.
Like
Apparently,
dog-eared.
nobody has any idea how long things take, and this is why that the real miracle of the Bible is that the temple was completed under budget and on time.
It's gonna be the miracle of lights, the miracle
Good
of
man. See, it was good management. See, Sally.
right.
So the.
Well, I believe it required divine intervention.
Well, I said good management. See, there we go. On to story 2. Oh God, yeah, Mr. Bezos, Amazon, from bookstore to backbone of the internet. Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Oh, he's also. I thought it was a key time to talk about Amazon because this week he has resigned as CEO of his beloved Amazon. So, Heather, what do you think of Mr. Bezos' decision to resign from his CEO position? And Amazon, it's a good time to look at Amazon, isn't it, Heather?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's been with Amazon. Like, let's put this in context. He's been the CEO of Amazon for almost 30 years. Like, can you imagine being at a company with that as leading that company for the high stress that takes? And especially like a public profile company, like starting from the founder, like trying, like the stress of like building a company, then like after it's become public, like having all of those eyes on you and having to make sure that you hit the shareholder statements, like that is like high stress position for 30 years. Dude deserves to step down.
Yes, it is convenient, however, that he's stepping down sort of just at about the time when the CEO of Amazon, whoever it may be, is going to, need to have some conversations with the legislature.
No, but I mean, he's still like, just because he is stepping down from Amazon doesn't mean that he isn't going to still like be in front of Congress and be in front of like answer to all of these things. Like, I mean, I think that's going to free him up to do all of that.
Every time I look at him, I just think Dr. Evil. I'm sorry. I just expect the white cat and
the picture in The Verge of him sort of striding out in the sunglasses is such a trope of like, movie kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, I started buying books on Amazon. It must have been 95 or 96. And it was odd enough when there was like a transition from being a bookstore to being a everything store. There has been a long evolution, and 30 years is a heck of a long time to stay in the same job. One may like or dislike Jeff Bezos, based on what you've read about him, but it's not that surprising, especially if he's going to be putting his energy into the space project.
Yeah.
All right. What do you reckon, Stephen? What do you reckon? What do you reckon about Mr. Bezos? And
the article just kind of like goes through and summarizes like how Amazon started and where it got to where it is now. It's an interesting story. Jeff Bezos is a smart guy, and I think like he's done some amazing things, or his company has, for like the cloud and pushing servers into the cloud and making it like a manageable and deployable structures that work. And it's interesting because that's really where all the revenue is being generated. Like, it's not unlike a lot of companies that start in one direction and sure, they keep like their little side hustle going, but like their e-commerce portal is not, we always get like stuck in that and forget to look at the cloud computing engine that Amazon has and what a massive revenue generator that is for them. I mean, you look at like what Walmart's doing from a revenue thing versus what Amazon's doing from a revenue from their e-commerce stores or their commerce stores, brick and mortar versus your e-commerce. And Walmart's just eating Amazon for lunch right now. If you would look at profit margins, if you look at total revenue, like they're killing it. But Amazon has been able to build all these other really cool businesses because they were in e-commerce and they had to solve these problems for themselves. And so they've positioned themselves in a really cool place by solving these complex issues and then selling that solution to other people. So I can go and sign up for.
Well, right, like the
AWS.
recommendation engine and the logistics and they had to learn how to do a whole bunch of things that are, more profitable than the store. The store is kind of the loss.
The store was the catalyst for them to figure out all this other stuff that actually makes the money, which I think is an interesting kind of thing that as business owners you can look at and say, like, they pivoted, sure, but they kind of kept this core, we're an online e-commerce store, central, and they use that to split off all of these other huge revenue generating, huge profitable kind of sectors of their business. Which I think is like a real smart.
And they did go through a very sticky period, for about 5-6 years. They were not the darling of a lot of stock pickers. Now, a lot of people were consistently attacking Amazon, i.e. accompanied, when was it ever going to make any decent profits?
Yes, it was a long time before it was profitable, but they had the persistence to.
Yeah. So, what do you reckon, Spencer? Miss Dr. Evil?
No, not really. I would say the world only has a few, let's say, caricature billionaires that we all know. This article reminds me of how much I kind of wish Steve Jobs had not died, because it would be a really interesting story. If you imagine now Steve Jobs, healthy and at his prime, competing against Jeff Bezos, because we know with Microsoft, Bill Gates gratefully just backed away, and then Paul ran it the way he ran it and so forth, but his successor. But the point is that Microsoft backed away. If Apple had Steve Jobs at the helm, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing today, which was, I would say, arguably missing on every account. I mean, they were basically a hardware company and a sort of services company, but when you compare something like Siri to Alexa, or you consider all the ways, like with the online cloud services, that Amazon is doing it right and Apple is really just not doing anything at all, it kind of makes me long for how cool it would be. Because where you do see competition is, let's say, between Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos in the space, you could see that that's really heating up to be kind of cool. And then we're going to have things like air taxis, these little electric air taxis.
Yes, although you should keep in mind that, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs were basically the same age. And so, and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are younger.
Not by much, though. I mean, they're maybe 5-8 years younger. I'd have to look it up. But Steve Ballmer.
Oh, I can tell you they make a big difference.
Steve Ballmer didn't have the thing to take it in the direction like Bezos did with regard to new and innovative stuff. And he stepped back. The new CEO does a good job, but Microsoft is kind of in the Oracle world where fine, it's, software and that sort of stuff. But in this space, what's interesting is if you read this, like literally, and think about it, as Heather said, 30 years, and with the exception of being beleaguered by these gotta have it yesterday stock investors, where's my money? This guy stood his course from his little storefront, little office cubicle into the richest guy in the world with a company that is in everything, everywhere. It's hard to find anything that he's done that's a flop, with a few hardware exceptions. And so it's not even that he's stepping down. He's got all the money in the world. He's got his girlfriend, Lauren Sanchez. He apparently had a very successful divorce, and his wife has become ex-wife is the greatest philanthropist ever. Kudos to her. I think we can beat him up, but I would say to sort of look at it like, shit, I mean, he really makes life interesting for a lot of us in an everyday sense. And I hope this leads to more cool stuff. I mean, really.
So, John, Mr. Mars, Union Buster, doesn't really want to pay his drivers their tips. There always seems to be the good side of Mr. Bezos, but there seems to be a pretty a kind of meanness about him and the way his operation runs, doesn't it? Kind of almost
Isn't
petty.
this kind of common among billionaires?
I don't know, but
you get rich by demanding free labor from everyone else.
Well, it's a kind of petty meanness, isn't it, John? Isn't it?
Well, you can't. There's a couple things here. For one, I was not aware.
And number one, does John know what you mean by mean, Jonathan? Because it's a different word in British and American.
I've been using it for the past 15 years in this blessed continent. So, maybe that's where I've been going wrong. All right, there we go.
Yes. I mean, to Americans, mean means unkind, and to Brits, mean means stingy.
Well, I kind of see it in both, really, a little bit. Yeah.
Well, stinginess is not exactly kind.
It's not a virtue. Yeah, he's like the modern day Scrooge. But I did not realize that Jeff Bezos had been a hedge fund manager before he quit.
When he was like a baby.
Yeah, so it wasn't like he came up off the streets. You know what I mean? He had money. So I want to highlight this for like people who are, worship or admire like billionaires. There's always something. Like Elon Musk's parents had not a diamond mine, but an emerald mine in South Africa during apartheid. So, there's all these different things that are in the background. I would want to know, like, why are the billionaires so focused on leaving Earth and going to Mars? What do they know that we do not know? Because now it seems like a race to see who can get to Mars and reinvent indentured servitude if you want to be part of their colony. So,
they want to get away from those Rothschild lasers that are setting the fires off, don't they?
I'm with John on this because we could have a whole show about alternative, what's really going on in the available technology, and because there is a fascinating. Why was it that we went to the moon and then stopped, and then there's like 45 years later, we're like everybody's got to get there.
They never went. It was a conspiracy, didn't you know?
Whatever you want to say, it's fascinating. Like. What about all the billions that were spent on everything else in the meantime? Like, why all of a sudden this imperative that we're racing out there, which is good, but it's fascinating. We should have a whole show on that someday.
Well, there we go. All right, I think we're going to go for our break. We'll be back in a few minutes with some other great stories. See you soon, listeners and viewers. We're coming back. We've had a good discussion, I think. The panel seems pretty juvenated, getting ready for their weekend. Well, before we go on to the next stories, I want to tell you about a webinar me and Spencer are doing on Friday, the 12th of February at 10:30. You want to join us live, you'll be able to ask me and Spencer questions. We're going to be talking about how do you use marketing automation with Lifter LMS and LearnDash. How do you put your membership website on steroids by using the power of marketing automation? I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a great webinar. I know me and Spencer are pumped for it, or Spencer is, and you need to join us. How do you do that? Just go to the WP-Tonic website. There's a button on the top menu that says webinar. Click it. You can sign up really quick, and then you'll be told with a link how to join the live webinar and be able to ask some questions. It should be a blast. So please join us on the 12th of February. On to the next story. Block Manager redesign coming soon. As soon as I read this, I thought of Spencer. I just go, still trying to find the right button.
Well, yes. I mean, the response to the headline was, "It's about damn time."
He's still getting older by the second, trying to find his freaking button. What do you reckon, Spencer? I just thought of you straight away with
I do try now. I mean, as I said, even with LaunchFlows, I made it so it's compatible with Gutenberg because I do see the potential. But it's again similar to, let's say, some of the cool new apps those little kids are using, where you need to know the magical 3-finger swipe to the left 12 degrees, move it up to the right and down, and or we could have had a skeuomorphic button. Like, I still find trouble with why is Gutenberg constantly evolving when we really know what it should look like as far as the UI. Wouldn't it be cool if we MVP'd let's copy what Elementor does and just get it running, and then somebody can work on the UI over time or something. Because right now, the notion that it's so hard to figure this out is baffling. In the meantime, when I do have a client or somebody who starts out and I go, oh, let's create a new page here, and I go, boom, we hit the raw Gutenberg. I 1,000 tries and I still blank out. Like, why is the permalink thing buried 6 menus in and you have to be on the right tab? And why is it that they couldn't have just done something basic and obvious? And nobody can give an answer here. I mean,
well, it's crickets, isn't it? And if you do, you know, I'm just tired.
Because.
I'm tired of this freaking story. It's like War and Peace, this bloody thing. It should have been all done and finished, to go, as far as I'm concerned, about 18 months ago.
If you made a car today, you might change the steering wheel like the new Tesla, so it's like a control yoke of an airplane, but it still turns, right? If you made a new car today and you had to steer it by, like pumping ski poles up and down, people would think you're out of your freaking mind on every level. But yet that seems like what's going on here. Like, why can't we just adapt?
And there was a day when that was more or less how you steered cars. I mean, I would have hated to drive some of those.
Right. Like how about like horse and buggy? You got to pull the reins to steer.
I would do better with the horse and buggy I used to ride.
I feel a bit guilty here. It's like kicking an ill dog, isn't it? Sorry.
Well, you do kind of wonder, given that there are, there are examples of how this kind of setup works, and that tiny, narrow, you can't resize it, sidebar where all the stuff is very frustrating. Yep, got a 27-inch screen in 4K, and that sidebar is still like this wide.
Yeah. Stephen, why is this dog staggering on? Will it ever end, Stephen? Or, am I just being mean? Am I at the core of me? Am I a terrible joint host, Stephen? Or am I a terrible, unreasonable person?
The reason why they can't copy something like Elementor and stuff is because they can't be as opinionated as Elementor. Elementor is a very opinionated system that has a methodology. If you want to add your own custom stuff to it, you have to do it the way that they want you to do it. And if you don't, there is hell to pay for it. WordPress, unfortunately, does not have that luxury and needs to be able to try to please and make everybody happy and make it backwards compatible and make it so that it can run PHP 5 and 7 and now pretty soon 8. And that is hard stuff to work around. So I don't think this story is ever going to die soon, because it's something that is just very difficult and it would take hundreds of developers, hundreds of years to, I think, get it right.
So do you think that...
We'll always be in it like, this is an okay standpoint, but like, it's not great and it's not terrible. And that's, where we're going to live.
So do you think they just underestimated how hard all this was going to be?
No, I think I think they know how hard it is. I think they know they needed to do something.
They know now.
I think they knew they needed to do I think they knew they needed to do something. I think they knew it was going to be hard, which is why they've completely changed going to a React sort of methodology versus a PHP. Like, they knew what they were going to do was going to be radical, so you might as well be radical about it. It's not a lack of knowledge. It's a lack of doing anything on WordPress from a core standpoint is hard, especially if it's messing with old features. If you're adding new features like the API, like they did several years ago, like that's one thing. But when you are going back and you are messing with core functionality and how everything works, that is not a easy thing.
Yeah.
And it takes
so John, when Moulton was a regular on our panel, he said this was the big debate, really. Should they have done what Moulton suggested and some other people took the opportunity to say, this is new WordPress, this is 2.0, if you want to keep the old going, we will keep it going for so many years, but this is a totally fresh start on fresh technology, and we're not, you're gonna, and took the opportunity from top to bottom to modernize the thing rather than trying to keep this old dog going. What do you reckon, John?
I mean, in my opinion, it would have been much quicker to just rebuild it from the beginning if the idea was to create a product that would compete with Weebly and Wix and Squarespace, which is obviously what they want to do, and that's where the VC money is really going. That's the play. But I think part of the problem is we're still trying to leverage this goodwill from the community and the 5 from the future and all this volunteer work, and also leverage plugins that are in the repo. I know that's offered on one of the packages on WordPress.com, not like all of them, but not every single plugin. But I think they were trying to leverage these different things and shoehorn it into a product. Yeah, it probably would have been easier to launch a WordPress 2.0. We'd probably already have a finished product. But the problem is they were, I think that they thought it was advantageous to still use the goodwill from the community because it is built up for this existing software, and there's this worldwide community built around it. And I think that was the kind of the gambit that they took.
I think also if you look at other products like Magento, when Magento went from Magento 1 to Magento V2, they lost tons of users because you can't just switch over from one system to another. Angular,
they would have had to make a good migration path.
Right, but it's hard. Like that takes tons of time in itself. So Angular 1 to Angular 2, they lost tons of user base because of that. There wasn't a seamless way to go from one to the next, and you had to redevelop a lot of stuff. And I think if WordPress would have chosen the route to do WordPress 1, WordPress 2, it would have been, at the end of the day, the death of WordPress. You have to keep people on the same platform, but that's why we're in it's painful, regardless of how you're going to slice it up. That's why I'm not envious of anybody on any of those teams.
So, Heather, when is backward compatibility become a real problem rather than something to be praised? When does it become such a problem that you're better off saying we can't just keep on supporting stuff forever?
As a CTO, the decisions that I make for backwards compatibility, I only ever care about 2 versions back. And I think that Apple kind of makes the same decision. It's if you're still using an iPhone 8, then you're screwed. We don't really care anymore. And that's fine. You make the decision for something like Google Chrome. If you're using more than I don't know what they're on right now, 28 or 32 or something. If you're using Chrome 20, you're out of luck. So yeah, 2 major versions back, or about Microsoft goes overboard, for example. They care about things that are 15 years old. But they
there's a bunch of things that haven't changed in 15 years.
No, but they also have the money to support that. So it scales up with how big your team is. So, but yeah, 2 major point versions back. Not point version, 2 major non-point versions back of your software is what you should be supporting.
But do you know, you've got no insight, but you've got experience, with Evernote and your consultancy and everything else you do. Do you think, do you sense that this idea of backward compatibility, to the extent that WordPress and Automatic decided, has become a real hurdle to them?
Yeah, and also that they support. So somebody came to me the other day and was like, why isn't your software compatible on Microsoft Edge on Mac? And I'm like, have you ever checked a Google Analytics feed? That browser is in other, the other category. It's below Safari, which is the least used Mac browser. It's below people using Opera. Opera even shows up in Google Analytics. Microsoft Edge is in the other category, which is 0.01%. You can't support things that are that small. So it's that's I think that by trying to be able to support everything, and everything that people are writing in about, that's where they're running into trouble. They need to just say, we're supporting the top 3 browsers on the top like 5 most compatible. Like, we will support WordPress on Chrome OS, on like Android phones, on iOS mobile devices, on Windows devices, and on Mac devices, and that's it. Like, so top 3 browsers on each of those things, and done.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I
thanks
think
for
what
that.
Heather brings out an interesting point, that like where WordPress went wrong was 10 years ago. Like when they developed this idea of supporting things way back, when they added jQuery migrate, when like this is where like I think the pain that we're seeing now happened, was because there was decisions that were made a long time ago that has what feels like very little to do with what's going on now, but it actually has everything to do, because they set this precedent that they were going to support stuff, and now they're trying to live up to that precedent.
But they can change it. Like, that's the thing.
Right.
Like, they're
mean,
allowed to change it.
The thing that got the biggest applause at the last State of the Word I watched was when Matt said that, we were finally going to stop supporting PHP 5. And, that like he seemed really surprised at the enthusiasm in the response to that. But it's like, hey, the developers know that that's been holding them back, having to be compatible with old versions of PHP that don't have the capabilities that the newer ones do.
Well, I kind of link it to his fantasy that somehow Jetpack is a driver of growth. I kind of link it all together. And he was surprised. To me, it's all a sign of a top management that's really quite out of touch with the realities. That's what it suggests to me, but I might be totally wrong. There we go. On to the next story. Oh, there's always a next story, isn't it? SaaS churn and short-term customers. Contrarian view, and it's from yes. So Stephen, a good article, typical of Mr. Fisher. He kind of writes a little bit long. I think Spencer gets a bit bored with his writing style, doesn't he? But I think he had. So Stephen, do you think there are a lot of startups in the startup world? It's a churn rate, and keeping it low kind of introduces methodologies that in the medium to long term won't benefit the company. What do you reckon, Stephen?
It's just one of those things that like it depends on the company. Some companies build in super high churn rates. Other companies exist to have very low churn rates. And to make like one blanket statement, like here's churn rates and here's what's going wrong. Now, like it depends on who you are, where you're doing, and what's your cost per user. If you can pay $1 for a user and make $1.50 from the user within a month, who cares what the churn rate is? Like, let's churn through as much as possible, as fast as possible, and then launch the next product or something. The methodology that you approach it with has so much to do with like your business use case, that I think it's a good article and it's interesting, but like you have to analyze it by what your goal is and what your business's purpose is.
So what did you reckon, Heather, about this article?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You need to, so when you're starting up a SaaS business, you need to focus on like what your ultimate goal is going to be. Like, how are you going to make money in the long term? But those short-term customers are the ones that keep the lights on for you to like to get that business to that long-term goal. So like the people that give you your money now are very, very important. And the people that give you the money like soon are also very important. But you also have to focus on like, how am I going to get the money recurring forever? and if you can get money in the door now that isn't going to cost you too much effort, then take that money while you're still focusing on the, like, I need money over and over and over again. That's not going to go away. And because once you get that, like, you can like get that ding like that bell dinging every month, then you are going to skyrocket. And that, I mean, that's how you get that growth, that hockey stick growth that you need as a SaaS company. Like if you get enough people that are just letting you charge them like every month or every year, forever, then you win. So those onesies and twosies that you get in the beginning will keep your lights on long enough to get, hopefully, the thousands and millions of people in the end.
So
I do
Spencer-
think you
oh,
can generalize the customer service point about how, as a customer, you appreciate it being, easy to leave when you need to leave. And also as somebody, thinking about trying something, if it's a low risk to try, that, that makes it easier. People have been said that's been a kind of a sales point for about 1 billion years, right? So but
well, I mean, this is, sorry, Sally, but this is why like AppSumo is so great, because like you're getting those like lifetime deals right away for companies, which are creating that vanity metric for companies so that they can then get investment off the bat, and they can be like, hey, look, there's all these people that are becoming a proxy for our lifetime growth. Like, I mean, like all of these people are saying that they would be customers forever. And that becomes a proxy for our, like eventually, like we can say month after month, these people would stay. And then people will then invest in them, and then they can prove that gives them the runway to prove the growth.
It's well, Spencer, what did you think of Mr. Fishkin's latest piece?
Sorry, Sally, I didn't mean to talk about
hey, no problem.
Well, what I found in the last, well, I mean, I've been doing subscription stuff my whole life, but in the last 15 years of online, is that the way that humans act is known to marketers, but it's not the thing that people want to admit is true. And it's very similar to what happens in dating and relationships. There's endless amounts of TV and book drama about why people choose to be in relationships with people they shouldn't be with. It's not the logical thing. It's not the objectively fair thing. It's the heart and the mind are different. Well, marketing works exactly the same way. If you follow his suggestions here, which are objectively plausible, it doesn't work out that way in real life. For example, if somebody has a SaaS service, well, I do take what Heather says as being factual. You need to hustle to the demonstrable level of recurring revenue of clients. If you were to send all of your early adopter clients these cute little, hey, we're different, and I just want to let you know that you've been paying me $22 a month since 1996, everybody would leave. If you don't tell them that, they stay forever. And you know what happens? After a certain amount of time, when the people do wake up and look at their PayPal and realize they've sent you $40,000 without ever using your service, they're so guilt-ridden about their own stupidity that they just go away. And maybe they'll turn it off, but they don't ask you or complain about it. In the same way, like if you dated somebody that was horrible for you forever, you might have gotten some satisfaction, but you don't go telling all your friends like, oh, I've been dating so-and-so on the secret. So in that way, I think he's misunderstanding. The part about lifetime value is another argument that I've had on this show. Lifetime value deals to me are the bane of the internet software world, because other than maybe Vito's argument that it's a great way one time to come out the gate and get attention, you are paying a lifetime of pain as the provider for those people. And I don't know if Heather meant that, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, I don't think that if you had 1,000 lifetime buyers at $59 for life, that's a good model to go to VCs with. And forgive me if that's not what you said, but to say, look, we've got 10,000 people that paid us $59 for life, so that means everyone else will pay us $59 a month. I think it's the opposite. And so what I've always taken is the approach of tell people what they need to know, but not what you don't need them to know, because it's their responsibility to check into it. And it's easier to beg forgiveness than to ask permission. And if your company does, as most of us want, a recurring revenue, just be clear about it up front, but don't, especially in America where there's no law, don't plaster your checkout sales funnel process with all these warnings, and don't keep reminding people every month that you're taking their money. And that's what, by the way, that's what the health club industry has done since forever. They have 12 times more people subscribe to an average real world health club than could ever fit into the club. They don't tell you every month that you're at Bally's Health Club and you haven't been there since 1977. And the reason they do that is because they know that that's the business. And so,
well, so Spencer, the key to the lifetime value thing, is the lifetime deals, is you're supposed to come up with a lifetime deal that's about the price of a 3-month subscription. And if you get that price right, then what you can do to go to a VC is you show them, like, I got all of these people to pay upfront the three-month price for my subscription. And what the thing is if you can get people subscribed for 3 months to your app, the likelihood that they'll remember that they've subscribed to it is so low that people will just keep paying for it forever.
I will take what you said and I'll give you a real world example. So, and I don't think he would be upset if I discuss this. I spoke with Jack about WP Fusion's lifetime deal because there was a number of people who absolutely wanted it. Now, I've had other past businesses lifetime deals and I considered whether for LaunchFlows, but LaunchFlows is too early to even think about it. So what he did after his own decisions, of course, but we discussed it, was there were so many people who said they wanted it. He made it like a relationship choice. Why do certain people, knowing better, get married a second time or a third time or a fourth time, even though the proposition to them is clearly going to be expensive if it doesn't work out? Because they're romantic. Well, he said to certain people that if you bought the regular deal, let's say it's $247 a year. He said, if you want to get the lifetime deal on this, you can get the lifetime access to the automatic downloads, but you're buying only 3 years of personal support. But I'm not going to charge you 3 times $247. I'm going to charge you 5 times that. And so the lifetime deal is demonstrably saying you so desperately want to prove that you need this deal that you're going to pay a premium. And therefore, I'm only going to be married to you for 3 years. And, you know, you can go through my garbage and look at pictures of me with my new life after 3 years, but that's fine because that's no problem for me. That, I agree with you, would be a really interesting thing to say. Look how much people love my product, but it still doesn't. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't think it demonstrates that compared to, say, what if you asked people to commit to a 3-year subscription? A 3-year subscription is different than a lifetime deal, because then what you're saying is people do value, I would rather give you all my money up front and not think about it. And that is the thing that will potentially renew. And now you go to a VC and it's proven that VCs, I don't remember the multiplier, but a business with one-time products is like a 3 or 4 times multiplier. A business with a subscription model is like a 5 to 8 multiplier, yeah. I think. So, you know, the idea is it's money in the bank for a VC. But anyway,
right.
I find it sad in the WordPress world that there's so much opportunity lost with either not understanding what people will pay because they don't test it, they're afraid or something, or that everybody jumps into this AppSumo. And listen, Noah is a great guy. I kick his ass at chess years ago. He's fun. I don't think he runs a company anymore. I think his friends do. They've built up this subscription model themselves where you pay money to be like AppSumo Pro. But even their own subscription proves that it's more economical to do a la carte AppSumo than to do a subscription through AppSumo. And the reason is because the software vendors get screwed out of their minds when they offer an AppSumo deal on a, you know, to a subscriber. So anyway, devil in the details.
I have a kind of middle road with AppSumo. I think if you,
I suspect it depends who jumps on those deals, because you know, I have certainly bought some of those things and not used them.
It's a drug.
And right. And there's a lot of other people who will, you know, oh, it's such a deal, I have to buy it. I might use it sometime and don't. And so those people are not asking for support. You know, yeah. They've forgotten they even own the darn thing.
And that's the point. Like, I mean, and that's the same point that like the companies are making, the ones that are using it for more than an MVP and are going then to get additional funding. They're saying, like, look at all these people that paid us money that never even activated. Like, this is what we're expecting. So we see this exact kind of thing. Like, we'll expect people will sign up and then they'll let it keep charging. And the VCs knew this.
It could be a ticking time bomb though, the original WooCommerce and so forth, but the Woo, I had to think of their name, Woo Themes, when they were called Woo Themes.
Yeah, but they took it to the extreme though.
When 80 ran the company along with his other partners, okay, they did the lifetime deal.
I would like to mention this to them viewers. He's coming on the show in March for interview.
Right, and it was a classic. You know, it's a great use case if you look back on it, because things worked out for them just fine and so forth. But like, it was a classic, here comes my foot going into my mouth, because we realized, unlike the suggestion you had, which could happen, that it did come back to bite them, because they had a huge base of users, because the price of lifetime was so low that all of a sudden they had to change the deal on all of us who bought that deal. And they really had to deal with a PR nightmare. Now they overcame it. But those kinds of examples are what a lot of young software companies will do when they get enticed by an AppSumo, because what if it does turn out to be true that you've got 2,500 people who didn't forget about the software, and now they're sending you 40 emails going, hey, bitch, you promised me lifetime support. I own a piece of you.
Well, that's why you've got to limit. That's why you've got to limit how many you sell. Like, I mean, so for Evernote, all the way back in 2008, we sold an AppSumo deal for 500 of these. I mean, it was like $100 or something, like a lifetime Evernote deal. We knew it was going to be a loss leader, but we were doing it for advertising, which is what you should be doing it as. And people hadn't heard of Evernote, so this was like a marketing thing. And oh my God, we absolutely loved all of these people that were like, whenever they would call it and complain, like, oh my God, my lifetime AppSumo is like messing up. We would love it in support. We would be like, these guys are awesome. They're the OG people. It's so cool. So anyway,
that's a good point. If you can give them a limited scope, and it kind of goes back to like with Jack's thing. If you did a lifetime deal and you're at 3 years and 1 day, you're still going to love the product. You're going to love the support, but at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel versus I'll give you just one last example. Back in the first Web Designer 1WD days, we did certain lifetime things, and it went from thousands down to hundreds, down to, because we shut it off, down to like one dude, super nice dude. And he was literally on the email with us every week, expecting us to keep updating this thing for him by himself. And I finally just gave him his money back from 5 years before to shut him up, because I didn't want to be mean. He was right, but I was on the hook, you know, and that was where the difficulty can arise for some folks. I mean,
yeah. Oh dear, you do make me laugh sometimes, Spencer. Oh dear. Right.
Yes, if you're listening to the audio, you know, you need to come back to whatever minute this is and watch Jonathan cracking up.
Oh dear. All right, you're a bitch. All right. On to I think we need to strap the other stories, because I don't want this to become War and Peace. On to recommendations of the week. I'm recommending a book, The Riches of the Land. It's about how you make people, the American dream, come true again. You know, it's an interesting book. I highly suggest that you go and have a listen. I listened to it on audio book, so get the audio version. So, Spencer, have you got a recommendation for the listeners and viewers?
I do, actually. It's a blog post from Will Morris. I think we've seen his articles before, from Plugin Republic, but it is the latest stats on WooCommerce for 2021. Absolutely awesome if you look at the potential there. Like Jeff Bezos looked at blah, blah, blah in 1996. Anybody who is in the WordPress market, and especially those of us who deal with WooCommerce, exciting stuff when you see what's going on with WooCommerce and the penetration and how much opportunity is there. But it really also demonstrates how, I'm not saying they're dropping the ball, because clearly they've woken up this year, and John Wald, who we all know, is doing some stuff, and other people in that space with WooCommerce. But compared to Shopify, you know, WooCommerce is killing it, except Shopify gets all the glory and all the net profit because they've matured what they're doing with it. Whereas WooCommerce is still like an open source potluck dinner, you know, randomly bringing things together. And so for me personally, this was one of the most exciting statistical summaries I've ever seen, because I see gold in these hills, you know, for the future.
You do put your recommendations into chat panels. John, do you want to quickly give us a quick before you need to go off?
Oh no, yeah, and this recommendation is from a talk that my friend Alexis gave at a WordCamp, but doesn't seem to be online. But this is a write-up of that privilege as a developer, something that I think we need to focus on. And I see Sally's in there. I use that same plugin anyway. But oh, and I want to give a big shout out to the Amazon workers in Alabama who are voting to unionize this week. I hope you win.
That's probably why he left the CEO, the prospect of actual worker in a union. But he probably coughed, I'm leaving.
Did you read that stat, by the way? If Jeff, not that it's going to happen, but they're talking about the billionaires tax. They said if Jeff Bezos alone had been, let's say, theoretically taxed just for during the pandemic, his personal take or profit from the pandemic, that he would have ended up essentially back where he would, the richest man in the world, but that the money from just taxing him, a regular nominal tax, would pay for everything else for all the $40,000 average, like workers in the United States. And I'm not saying that's going to happen or that's like realistic, but I'm just saying when you look in comparison, like the stacks of sand, there's like the entire population of the normal America is able to be essentially put in a place of good standing this year if we just took like Jeff Bezos's personal profit from just in the last 9 months. Something about that just seems wrong. I'm not sure.
It's even a bigger question, really. That's it's never mentioned in the media.
Yes, except if we've got to rely on the government to distribute it, God help us all.
Yeah, but he's Amazon fulfillment centers have been allowed to keep open with thousands and thousands and thousands of workers all crammed together. Yet a mum and pop store or some other thing is required to close. There's been no. It's obvious to me that the argument. I do not see Amazon fulfillment center as an essential business. Yet there was no kickback to require his.
Well, they get away with very high injury rate
to close down. No kickback at all. Where any other poor person, obviously, you've got to keep supermarkets open to some extent because people have to have food to eat. But why is it classified that Amazon fulfillment center in any shape or form is essential? It isn't. But there was.
I don't know. Amazon seemed to be pretty essential to all of us. Once we couldn't leave the house.
There we go. Maybe that's why there was no kickback about him and his operation closing down. There we go. Sally, have you got a recommendation that you would like to?
Yes, I do. It's a plugin called HTTP headers, and it does exactly what it says on the box. It lets you modify the HTTP headers. Ran into a situation with a client where, because of a change in Chrome and how it defaults for your origin stuff, students going through their website appropriately were not able to access the collections that the university had subscribed to because the header had been stripped down to the root domain. So I reading all those instructions in Chrome and in Mozilla and in this and trying this and trying that. And it's just like, yeah, well, I'm doing the things they say, and it's not changing what that, header type it works out with for the refer source. And so I installed this plugin, and basically it says here you can set the referrer policy, and boom, there it was. It worked. The students could get access again. So while there may be some longer term issues regarding security, privacy, etc., which is why these changes are being made, in this case, it didn't seem to me like there was any private information from the students that was going to be transmitted. I suppose one could, argue about that a little, but still, it worked. It did the thing the client needed it to do. So I am very glad of its existence.
There we go. Stephen, have you got anything you want to recommend? Oh, you're muted, Stephen.
Yes, I do. I am going to recommend a lid for your water bottle. And I'm going to do a demo, so check out the video. But most lids that come off take more than a quarter turn. That is a quarter turn to get a drink of water versus several full turns that most lids require. Doesn't seem like a lot of time, but you do that enough times in a day, and all of a sudden you have hours on your hands by the end of your life.
Yes, my water bottles have things that snap up.
Yes, I like the full lid off thing, and there's very few that do it well. And I stumbled across this by Simply Modern. And so,
Well, I don't have a lid, I just have a glass. So there we go. I'm old fashioned. Heather.
Yes, but do you take it in your car?
So for those that are listening to this much later, this is happening during Black History Month. So I just wanted to give a call out to the legendary miniseries Roots, which is on sale right now on everything that you watch things on. I put a link to the iTunes version, but it's $15 for one of the best miniseries of all times. So
That's a bargain, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember when that came out. That was
Oh yeah,
80s,
it was
right?
such a big deal.
Cecily
Yeah.
Tyson and
who just died, unfortunately. But
who's Geordie LaForge? I can't remember his name.
yeah, LeVar Burton. It was like
LeVar
one of his
Burton.
first
Oh,
things.
I've got to mention, really, I've got to do it. I've got to also give another recommendation. You've got to watch the latest Randy Rainbow parody of Mrs. Taylor Greene. It's the most funniest thing on the internet. The man is a genius. Put it that way. Heather, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
I am Heathriel everywhere on the interwebs.
All right, the whisperer. So, Stephen, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
head over to zipfish.io, run a speed test, and see how much faster we can make your website.
Yes, and he made the WP-Tonic website faster. He's a magician. So, Sally, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
I'm either at Sally Getch or at WP Fangirl, pretty much everywhere. And if you follow me on Instagram, you will see pictures of the cats who, for some reason, did not grace us with their presence.
No, there are no cats today. What have you been doing with them?
Yeah, well, maybe it's because I fed them already.
Yeah, that's
Gonna
probably
rub
it.
catnip all over your head.
Yeah, so, John, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
You can find me at my website, which is lockdownseo.com, or go to my YouTube channel. Just search for Lockdown SEO.
There we go. And Spencer Forum, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Usually the police blotter or the missing persons lists. Otherwise, launchflows.com or go to the homepage at wpfusion.com and click get a free call.
That's great. We'll see you next week with another great roundtable show. Opinion, discussion, ideas. What more can you ask for, listeners and viewers? We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.